Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the March edition of the Committee of Adjustment. Moving ahead with the agenda, the first three applications are sign applications. I'd like to draw it to the attention of those people applying for sign variances that this committee only is an advisory capacity to City Council. They have the final say, and the sign variances will be going to Council on Monday, April the 1st, 2019, and I believe Council starts at 7 o'clock. Without further ado, let's move on to the first application, which is SG 2019-005, 1275 Bleems Road. If there's anyone in support or opposition to that, please come forward. Applicants would sit over there, and anyone who has other comments should sit off to my left.
Good morning, Council.
Good morning, and for the record, your name is?
Darren Ouellette from Canada Sign.
Okay, Darren, have you read the staff report?
Yes, I have.
Do you have any questions or comments?
No, we're pleased.
Okay, let me just take a quick look. Having gone through the report, I think it's fairly straightforward. The applicant is asking for a 6.05 meter squared sign, which is actually 1/3 than the allowable size. Staff report says that this sign is 90 degrees from the nearest residence. And I have a question about that, in particular to staff. In looking at the photograph on the first page, the position where the sign is to be located isn't actually 90 degrees from the properties across Bleems. So my question to staff would be, the property that is adjacent across Bleems from the applicant is currently vacant land. Is there some long-term plan for that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the property that is across the street is in the Rosenberg secondary plan, or actually it's not in the Rosenberg secondary plan, and it only goes up to Bleems Road. I believe there are intentions to develop those lands, but they're in private ownership right now, so the timing of that could be many, many years. Yeah. So.
Thank you. The next question I would have, just as a matter of interest, because the residential properties are a fair distance away, I'm sure that some of those people on Tamville Crescent would have received notification that there was a sign application, that they would have received that. Okay, and there's nobody in opposition or making comments about that. I do believe through staff that in the bylaw it does say that for changing copy signs, the copy must remain static for 6 seconds. That is in the bylaw, so it doesn't need to be mentioned here. But just to note for the applicant, that is a requirement of the bylaw that the changing copy remain static for at least 6 seconds. And that's all I have to say. Any comments from my colleagues on the committee? Then does someone have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'm willing to move the staff recommendation.
Seconder? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is SG 2019-006, 1415 Huron Road. Those in favor or in opposition, please come forward.
Morning.
Good morning. And your name for the record, sir?
Alex Vandersloos from Schlegel Urban Developments.
Okay, thank you. Have you read the staff report?
I have.
Any questions or concerns?
One comment, the address is stated a few times in the report as 1215 just wanted to clarify that it is 1415 Huron Road. And then I have a suggestion for an alteration to one of the conditions.
Okay.
There's a condition that the sign be turned off from 10 p.m. till 6 a.m., which is a common condition that's being put in these as I've read recently. I would ask that that be altered to 12 a.m., midnight to 6 a.m. We do have several businesses in the plaza that are open later than 10 p.m. Tim Hortons is open till 11:30. Shortstop is open till 11 or 11:30. St. Louis Bar and Grill is open till 1 a.m. So for some of those businesses that are deeper into the site and aren't immediately on Fisher Hallman, the signage along Fisher Hallman and Huron roads would be very important to them, having that exposure on the main roads. So, just to add to the idea that the plaza is still open and functioning past 10 p.m. and as late as 1 p.m., to have the sign on a bit later. The sign that we're looking to install actually has an automatic dimming feature relative to the kind of ambient light outside. So at nighttime, the sign dims itself based on how much light there is to kind of compete with. So you won't have that kind of glaring bright white light in the middle of the night. The signs will be perpendicular to the residential properties across the streets, so it won't be shining into anybody's windows or anything like that. I brought some kind of contextual packages if that would help. Include some pages from the owner's manual of the sign talking about the dimming function, just as well as an aerial photo showing the relation of the signs to the surrounding properties. If you guys would like to see them, I have them available.
So if I understand that's well, first off, thank you very much for correcting the address. I had noticed that too. Typos sometimes do happen.
Yes.
So that's your only request, is that the timing of the sign be extended to 12 p.m. or 12 a.m., 12 midnight?
Midnight, yes.
Okay.
Midnight to 6 a.m. be the shut-off period rather than 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.
While my colleagues think about that, I have a couple of questions, actually for staff. It mentions that there's accessory advertising, third-party accessory advertising to be dealt with on this sign. Is that for the property that is across White Oak Trail?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe it's a question perhaps the applicant can, I don't know to whom they are allowing the third-party advertising, so.
Yes, it is the property to the north across West Oak Trail. I have it shown on this map here, if that's helpful.
I think we have that. In the staff report, it does mention that this property to the north is going to be treated as one development with the applicant today. I have some concerns with it being across the road. If it was an adjacent parking lot or an adjacent property to the one in the application, I wouldn't have as much problem with it. Third-party advertising can be a complication. I think I can use that term. I will leave that for my colleagues to have comment on if they want. Static for 6, no, okay. Maybe a question for, another question for staff. Due to the proximity of the roundabout at Fisher Hallman, is there any concerns that this will be unduly distracting to the traffic at that roundabout?
Through you, Mr. Chair, firstly, the region is circulated on all applications, and Fisher Hallman is a regional road, and had there been a concern, I'm almost certain we would have heard about it from the region, probably with some appropriate recommendations. I do also have my colleague here from a traffic standpoint. Perhaps he could also add something, but I think we would have heard about it from the region had there been a concern. So.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have no concerns for the sign on Huron Road. And as Julian said, or my colleague, that the region would have commented on Fisher Hallman. Hopefully, yeah.
Are there any questions or comments from the committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have several questions for the applicant and staff. Just for the applicant to start, it's a multi-tenant sign that I'm looking at, just you can confirm that.
Yes.
So what is the purpose of the changeable copy then?
So we currently have 2 vacant spaces, but once our site, 1415 Huron Road, is leased out, we'll have 17 tenants at the site. So kind of in an effort to reduce the size of the sign, instead of having kind of a constant like vinyl sign for every single tenant, just having a few of the major tenants like Tepperman's and St. Louis or Tim Hortons or whoever it may be, kind of having the permanent sign near the top, and then offering opportunities for advertising to the rest of our tenants. So we could have, the site's big enough that we could have gone to the maximum size allowed, 7.5 meters tall, 20 meters of square of sign face, and offered static advertising to all of our tenants, but kind of in an effort to reduce the size and our own cost a little bit, make the sign smaller, have the opportunity for the LED screen that, customer or tenants can advertise if they have a monthly special or something going on, that they can use the LED screen or just, show their business out, whatever they choose to put on there that we approve of.
Just a follow-up question then. So I'm assuming that the big tenants that you mentioned are going to be on the sign at all time?
Likely, yes.
Yes. So then a follow-up question for staff. The overall sign, can it be lit until 1 a.m.?
I would have to check the sign bylaw. I mean, it's a large document. I'm not familiar with every specific regulation. If you'd like me to look into it, I can, but I'd have to go upstairs and actually take a look at it because we don't have access to it here.
Yeah. I'm happy to hear from the applicant. He
Yeah.
seems to have an answer for me.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time working with the bylaws in our office. So, our signs, like in the Williamsburg Town Center, our signs are lit all night. As far as I know, there's no required shut-off period for just having kind of a lit sign box. But the changing copy does have that regulation.
Just for the benefit of the committee, then, I have no issue with changing the addressing, but I see no benefit to changing the staff recommendation about 10 a.m. I think the other major tenants are going to have a lit-up sign for pretty much all night.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure I'm ready to foreclose on the option put forth by the applicant as of yet. In lieu of the 10 p.m. And moving it back to midnight, the applicant offered the fact that this sign will automatically dim over time as it gets darker out. I'm wondering, and he has materials associated with the specific sign, I'm wondering if there is any way that we can, in giving him that flexibility to midnight, we can incorporate a condition for the dimming. I don't know if it would reference the specifics of the sign and their specific material. I'm not sure, but it's just an option that I would be willing to explore with the applicant if that was in the interest of the committee.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't disagree with Ms. Meter's comments. In addition, I wanted to also point out that the tenants that Mr. van der Sloos has mentioned are likely going to be located closer to the street, so you're going to be seeing these buildings, I would assume, right? I mean, where are they on the site? Because Tepperman's is sitting really far back, and you can still see Tepperman's everywhere because it's a large building. But the other, I can't remember all the businesses that you mentioned, but are they going to be located closer to Fisher Hallman and or Huron frontages so that you would be able to see them? I'm just wondering in terms of on the site where they're located.
Sure. Tim Hortons is located along Fisher Hallman and has a second story where they have an outdoor patio and upstairs seating that you can see from the road. Shortstop is also in that same building but doesn't have any windows or anything along Fisher Hallman that you would see. They're kind of sunk down. The site is significantly lower than Fisher Hallman. We have a retaining wall along Fisher Hallman. And then St. Louis Bar and Grill is located next to the Teppermans, so quite far into the site off West Oak Trail.
Does that satisfy your question?
I'm not sure. I think it would still be a condition. The applicant has some materials he offered to hand out. I don't know if it's worth looking at to see if it's an option of including a condition for dimming and to allow the flexibility to midnight as requested. I don't know.
I think the aspect of the automatically dimming portion, which is obviously easily done through software, I think that's an interesting option. I understand the applicant's request to extend it to midnight due to there being multiple business operations on site, and it is a very, very busy road. Having said that, I remain unconvinced, totally convinced that the setting of a precedent, which we don't normally do, setting of a precedent to allow something later than the procedural 10 p.m. And my opinion is that I would support the staff report as it is with the correction for the address. Any further comments from the committee?
By the way, there. The comment was made that the permanent signage would be the major tenants, and I'm hearing that those will be the tenants that have longer than normal hours, and that the sign itself will be lit all the time. And the changeable sign portion of the sign will be for smaller tenants with, I'm going to suggest, fewer hours in the day, that the advertising would be of little benefit to them from 10 till midnight. Am I accurate in that assessment?
Yes, I wouldn't say you're wrong. I can't. At this point, I don't know who exactly would be on the sign permanently. It's kind of up to the tenants if they choose to go on. If I don't know what we'll do if more tenants want to go on than we don't have room for. It could be whoever wants to pay a higher rate, potentially. So I can't confirm which tenants would be on the sign at this time.
Just to end the discussion, Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to move the staff recommendation as is, with, of course, the change of the address from 1215 Huron to 1415 Huron. I think it appears in a couple of spots.
Before I ask for a seconder, there is one other thing that I would like to add to this as a condition. It's mentioned on the staff report, page 2, and it's not covered off in the conditions, that advertising for businesses located outside the two properties in question will not be permitted. That's a constraint on the third-party advertising, and I think that's a good suggestion. So was that a motion, Mr. Hanna?
That could be a friendly amendment.
Okay, then if that's taken as a friendly amendment, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Okay, approved as amended.
To be clear, what are the new conditions?
Excuse me?
There was an amendment. I just wasn't clear on what the new condition was.
Do you want to? Essentially amending the correction of the address.
Okay.
And that the third-party advertising, accessory advertising, be restricted to the businesses that are on those two properties only.
Okay, so the property adjacent. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Next application is SG 2019-007-540 Bingamans. All in favor, come forward. Those opposed? Good morning.
Good morning.
For the record, your name,
Scott
sir?
Patterson with LaBreche Patterson & Associates.
Good morning, Scott. Have you read the staff report?
Yes, we have, and we're here in full support of the recommendations and the conditions.
Okay. As I see this is just an amendment to cover a deficit of 32 meters between sign A and sign C. That's the only application or variance?
To be clear, there's two ground-supported signs that would front onto the roadway. This is to recognize the development of an internal sign. So there's a variance to each of the signs that are proposed along the roadway. And the interior sign would be basically for direction purposes, and it's also a request of the fire department to provide that internal sign.
Seems straightforward to me. Any questions or comments from the committee? Okay, a motion then?
Mr. Chair, I will move to approve or recommend approval of application SG 2019-7, subject to the conditions set out in the staff report.
And a second? Mr. Hanna, all in favor?
Thank you.
Just as a reminder, this goes before council on April the 1st. Next application is A2019-020, 650 to 664 King Street East. Anyone in support or opposition, please come forward. For the record, your name, sir? Turn on your mic.
Usama Abu Nassar, architect from OAN Architects.
Thank you. Have you read the staff report?
I did.
Any questions or comments on it?
No, everything is good.
If I understand it correctly, this is just to demolish the building in the middle for parking. I see that there's a half-meter encroachment into the CVT. And there's getting to be more and more of these requests. So a question to traffic planning. When the visibility triangle issues came forward a few years ago, staff's recommendation were pretty firm on that there would be no encroachments into the CVT. Is there a minor change in philosophy on this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I haven't been here that long, so I can't speak onto what happened a few years ago. But in discussing this application with my colleagues and management, we didn't see any concern, and that's just based. That's why our recommendations are as they are today.
I might also add that I believe it's an existing condition, and it's just recognizing that. So.
I also see that there's a tree management going to be handled through site plan, so we really don't need to address it here at the committee.
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay. Committee, Scott, you have a question.
Just a question for staff. What is the status of the site plan submission for this application?
It might be better suited a question to the applicant, so I'm not sure.
We already prepared the drawings, the architectural drawings, and the site servicing engineer, landscape architect, ready actually to submit as soon as we get this minor variance. So all the drawings is already prepared and meeting all the requirements of the city of Kitchener.
Okay, then just to follow up either to the applicant or staff, what are the risks, if you haven't applied yet, of other variances popping up through the process?
Just to go backward a little bit, if you allow me, our clients purchased this property. It has 3 separate buildings on it. zoned commercial, they could use it in many different ways. However, when we applied for building permit to use those buildings for whatever use, we discovered that there is they require parkings. With that said, that one of the buildings already was commercial from before, long time ago, and it was okay. But looked like because of the new use, they required many parkings, more than what we have already. So the client or the owner decided to demolish one of the buildings to provide those parkings, and we could fit the number required. Just we had those little two things. Actually, those came just because of the road widening situation on that road on King Street.
Any further questions regarding this application? Okay. Motion.
I'll move that the application as submitted be approved.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Next application is A2019-021, 859 Queens Boulevard. Anyone in support or opposition to this application, please come forward. Your name for the record, sir?
Philip Servos.
Thank you. Have you read the staff report?
Yes, I have.
Any questions, comments?
No.
If I understand correctly, this is just to replace a single car garage with a double car garage, and the setback variance from 6 meters to 0.91 meters, which is significant but not unheard of. Any questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Hanna.
Just a comment to the applicant. What is your timing on construction of the garage?
We want to do it in the spring if we can.
That's what I figured. Just a question for staff then. It's my understanding that there may be a need for an additional variance. I think it's from the visibility triangle. I think it's section 5.3. There does not appear to be anyone here in opposition. When we get to considering the motion, I think we should add a variance to section 5.3 and ask that staff put in the quantums, whatever they happen to be. Maybe staff can address that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I agree with Mr. Hanna. An additional variance for the driveway visibility triangle setback, there's an encroachment into that, is also required. For whatever reason, it wasn't caught. It is caught now. Staff agrees that if the committee could consider adding it, that would be appropriate. Technically speaking, it should be re-notified, but I know sometimes in the past. So I don't have any concerns.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, if I could just add, I probably would have asked for re-notification if there was somebody in opposition, but obviously the neighborhood has found out there's a garage being built and nobody seems to have any concerns. So I think we should help the applicant out.
So is that a motion to approve this with an amendment to include the visibility triangle?
Yes, I would move the application to recommend support as per staff recommendation with the additional variance. I think it's from section 5.3, and if staff could add the quantums to that motion, that would be appreciated.
We have a motion on the table, a seconder. Mike, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Thank you.
Next application is A2019-022 River Trail Avenue. Anyone in support or opposition to this application, please come forward.
Morning. Phil Howe with Fusion Homes.
Thank you. Seems fairly straightforward to me. Staff is making a recommendation that this be approved without conditions. Any comments from the committee? Can I have a motion?
Seeing that this has the support of staff, no conditions are required, and particularly it has the support of the Transportation Department, I will move that application A 2019-22 be approved.
Seconder, Mr. Hanna. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Next applications are A2019-23 pertaining to a bunch of properties on Weber Street, Scott Street, and Pearl Place. Anyone in support or opposition to this application, please come forward.
Good morning, here in support, and I'd like to hand out a site plan and the building renderings, as they weren't included with the staff report, but I think they'll be helpful.
That would be helpful. I would like to make a comment. Well, first off, let me ask, you've obviously read the staff report, and thank you for additional documentation. Do you have any questions or concerns as to staff's recommendation?
No questions or concerns with staff recommendation at all. We've been working quite closely with staff through the site plan process and had various discussions with them. We did also have a neighborhood meeting where we met with residents, and so the information that you have is the information we shared with the residents. So we intend to move forward with the final site plan approval. The conditions for approval in principle are with staff now, so we anticipate those shortly, and we'll move forward then with fulfilling those conditions of approval and looking for construction. We're probably talking sometime next year by the time some of the site work gets done and the record of site condition and just finalizing those conditions.
Thank you. I'll make just a quick comment here. This has been in the process for quite some time, and it did come to the committee in a previous event. I would like to thank the applicant for reaching out to the neighbors and to working with the neighbors and to finding a mutually beneficial solution. And I think that speaks well for both the neighbors and the applicant. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Ms. Meader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I would echo your comments. I think there has been a good amount of collaboration on this. I think it's an excellent project. Just one question for the applicant. I know there was a general comment that you've been working closely with staff and have no concerns with the staff report, but I just want to double confirm that all of the TDM measures set out in the staff report can be achieved on site?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the TDM measures are based on the discussions we've had with staff. In fact, we have an updated TDM report that reflects these measures, so we're satisfied with those as the approach in support of the parking reduction.
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up question. On the site plan, whereabouts are the bicycle parking spaces going to be located? I think I see the vertical bike racks on the parking plan. Is that 40 vertical parking spaces there? I'm just wondering where the rest of them are going.
So as far as the bike racks, Mr. Chair, there are internal bike racks as well. So internal to the building.
Surface bike racks?
There are some bike racks at the front of the building.
Okay.
And there are some bike racks to the rear of the building.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hanna?
Just one additional comment. The fact that there's no residents here, the same application was before us, I think that several months ago. Just indicates that the exercise that the applicant had with the neighbors was a positive one, and I see many positive improvements to the site plan. On that note, I'm prepared to move application A 2019-023 as recommended by staff.
That's with the two conditions as outlined in the staff report. We have a seconder. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Good luck with that. Next application is 2019-024, 51 Benton Street. Anyone in favor or opposed to this, please come forward. Welcome again. Staff is recommending a deferral on this application. So to the applicant, are you in favor of a deferral?
Yes, Chairman. Actually, just we were late with the firm doing the traffic transportation report didn't come on time for the staff to review it. So the staff recommended that to defer to next month. So we are okay with that.
Is there a date which staff would like to defer this to?
To next month. We've been in communication with Mr. Osama, and we've discussed this on a couple of occasions, and we're just waiting for the results of the traffic study so that our transportation staff as well as planning staff has enough time to review before making a recommendation on the application.
Question to the clerk of the committee. Do we need a motion to defer, or we just defer? Okay, this application is deferred till next month. Next application is A2019-025, 25 Bruce Street. Anyone in favor or in opposition, please come forward. And for the record, sir, your name is?
Matthew Sheedy.
Thank you. Have you read the staff report?
Yes, I have.
Any questions or comments on it?
No, I think it's really just a cleanup of what's existing there.
Okay. Which is essentially to legalize the current duchies from 572 meters squared versus the 225 meters squared that is permitted. Staff has a comment.
I just wanted to mention that the site's already operational, and with respect to one of the conditions, and I think Mr. Hanna may also be going to be speaking on that subject. Staff, in its preparation of the report, was offering a really generous time frame to complete the occupancy certificate, but it's something that staff concurs with. If committee concurs with staff, we could move that up to within a couple of months, having completed that, as opposed to an entire year. So that's all I wanted to add. And the Duchy store, I think, is just basically taking over square footage of other smaller footprint stores that were formerly located on the site, if I'm understanding correctly, right?
There was David's Gourmet.
So there's no additional square footage, it's just that it's one larger rather than three smaller. Yeah.
An amalgamation of a bunch to make one.
That's correct.
Mr. Hanna, did you have
Yeah,
comments?
I just had a quick question for staff. Do you know how long it typically takes to get an occupancy permit?
It's typically a very quick turnaround. I think a lot of it depends on if we have all the information that we need in order to issue it.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, and if would the applicant be willing to do, say, a 6-month process rather than a year? I
actually plan to have that discussion today about getting it right away.
Okay.
I normally ask anybody leasing the premise to go to the city and make sure everything's completed before they come and sign a lease.
Okay, I have one addition I'd like to, or modification amendment to the condition on item number 1. It says obtain an occupancy permit for a new convenience commercial space, and it has the bracket Dutchie's Fresh Market. Can we add currently in front of Dutchie's? Because if we take it the way it is, if it changes from Dutchie's, then it makes a problem.
Actually, I would recommend that you do not add that, simply because every time there's a change in ownership, we like to see an occupancy certificate to confirm the square footage and the use that is currently there, so that the city has current records in case anything should change. We typically require an additional occupancy certificate.
Okay, so
Yeah.
are you recommending that we delete that thing, the phrase in parentheses that specifies it as Dutchie's?
I would recommend that you leave it in, that we know it's for Dutchie's and Dutchie's only. Yeah.
You don't see a problem there. Okay. Any further comments from committee? Scott?
Again, my drive-by of the facility, it's a positive addition to the neighborhood. I'm suggesting to the committee that we modify condition number 2 to read, instead of March 19th, perhaps June 19th of 2019. Give the applicant 3 months to get an occupancy permit.
Is that acceptable to the applicant?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I like that. Staff has no concerns? Okay, so...
No, Mr. Chair, we do not.
Okay, is there a motion for this?
Mr. Chair, I move that the application be approved subject to the amendments to condition 2.
Seconder? All in favor? Approved.
Thank you.
Next application is, where is it here? B2019-008, 50 and 52 Breckenridge Drive. Anyone in support or opposition, please come forward. Good morning. Can you turn on your microphone there? Thank you. And your name for the record?
Lydia Vasek.
Thank you. Have you had an opportunity to read the staff report?
I did.
Do you have any questions or concerns?
No, I do not. I have questions regarding the recommendations as to whom the information is sent to.
Could you...
I'm soft-spoken at times. Just with the recommendation as to whom the information is sent to.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the owner or applicant will receive a notice from our clerk's department outlining exactly who she will need to contact in order to satisfy the condition. So you will get specific notice in the mail about that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Hanna.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Do we need to add the regional condition? That would be my only question to the committee. It's a $350 consent review fee.
I must have missed that. Thank you. Yes, we'd have to add a condition for the $350 region consent fee. As I understand the application, this is just splitting a semi, so I actually would have a question for someone from building who isn't here. I'm assuming that for this to proceed forward, the building must meet building code requirements for severance of the building?
Through you, Mr. Chair, our building division is circulated on the application, and had there been a requirement to change or modify the building in any way in order to accommodate that, it would have been flagged at this stage. Yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Can we have a motion? Scott.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to move the application in accordance with the recommendation from staff with the addition of the regional condition.
Seconded. All in favor? Opposed?
Thank you.
Next application is B2018-009, 500 Carnes Street. Anyone in favor or opposition, please come forward.
Morning, Mr. Shannon.
Good morning.
Alex Galloway of the planning firm Dryden Smith and Head.
Dryden Smith Head, I've heard that name before.
Have you?
I believe I have. Good morning. I think this is a fairly straightforward application to sever two new lots. I'm assuming you've had an opportunity to read the staff report?
No concerns or comments with any of them.
Okay. Over to the committee. Any questions or comments? Go ahead.
Just a question for staff. Normally on the consent reports, I've seen a comment from Heritage Planning staff. I don't believe there's any heritage issues whatsoever with this building, but I just didn't see any heritage comments, so I just want to make sure.
Through you, Mr. Chair, had there been a heritage concern, we would have received a heritage comment. Since this is not within a heritage district or has any heritage significant, we didn't receive a comment in that regard.
In going through the application, I see that most of my regular concerns, such as parkland, you smile, that's good. These things have all been looked after. I think this is fairly straightforward. I have no concerns. Does any of the committee have questions or comments? Can we have a motion?
With respect to application B.
Through you, the chair, sorry, there are regional conditions, so I just want it to be noted if the comment regarding the region.
I'm sorry, the regional consent?
The regional consent review fee. I just want it noted the region has requested a condition as well regarding Karn Street.
Yes, and it's addressed in the report.
Yeah. Okay, I just want to make sure it's there.
Yeah, it's there. It's number 13. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Seconder, Scott, all in favor? That's carried.
Thank you very much.
Oops. Next application is B2019-010, 50 Roos Street. Anyone in support or opposition, please come forward.
Good morning.
For the record, sir, your name is?
Ray Bonnell.
Thank you very much. Have you had an opportunity to read the staff report?
Yes, I have.
Any questions or concerns?
Nope, none whatsoever.
Okay, I have actually a question either for the applicant or staff. There's a sketch for the planning purposes on the last page. If I can find it. Where the property to be severed shows in dotted lines what looks like a footprint, and I think it says schematic building envelope. I don't think that pertains to this application. You're not planning to sever this, take it to the next property, and build another building on the property?
No, it's just the neighbor is buying it off me to add to his property. What he does with it down the road, I don't know.
Okay, so that really is irrelevant. Seems fairly straightforward to me. Any questions or comments from the committee? Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had the same kind of confusion with the application because it's listed as a lot addition, but it seems to be showing as a new lot. But I believe it is a lot addition, and if it is, I think that we should be adding a condition requiring the consolidation of title or PINs. That seems to be missing, and so I'd ask staff to confirm whether that should be added.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I can just comment on that, I think that has to happen. By virtue of the Planning Act, the conveyance has to occur within a year of clearing the conditions, so it will have to be conveyed onto title of the purchaser, and then it will merge on title as a result of that.
Are you suggesting that we need an extra condition for that?
To put the legalese in general terms, no, I'm actually suggesting I don't think it's necessary.
Okay. Comment from staff?
The staff would agree. and
I think
it's a standard, yeah.
I think what Mr. Hanna is referring to is specifically at the Land Registry Office, both parcels will end up with separate parcel identification numbers, which means that potentially the lots, if something down the road would cause them to separate, if they are consolidated onto one PIN number, has been a condition in the past, which Mr. Hanna may be referring to, that would cause the applicant, whoever receives the lot, to ensure that the PINs are consolidated. So it's a consolidation of PINs is what the condition would require.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my question, based on Ms. Meter's comments, were that this would happen just as a normal process?
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
But based on the Secretary Treasurer's comments, I don't see any concern with the added belts and suspenders if it's be consistent with what's been done in the past.
They will merge on title as law under the Act, but they'll have separate PIN numbers at the Land Registry Office if an application to consolidate the PINs is not applied for. That is what he's referring to.
Okay, I have a question for you, Mr. Hanna. Is this, in your experience, something that is desirable to have the PINs merged?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman, if I could just clarify, in my experience and also in just looking at other applications that have come before us, this condition had been added, and I'm worried about the once a consent, always a consent, that somebody then conveys the individual property that we're dealing with a separate PIN without anybody else knowing about it, and we don't have any. I mean, it's the size of a lot that could be built on, and then we have no other conditions that have been proposed about parkland dedication, servicing, etc. So I would like it if staff would add the normal consolidation of PINs.
Does the applicant understand what we're talking about?
Not 100%.
Makes two of us.
Sorry, I'd like to reassure the committee that this is a lot addition. It is stamped with a one-time consent opportunity, so that it doesn't change the fact that the ownership would be the same. What it changes is that the parcel, when the lot addition is added at the Land Registry Office, when you legally describe a lot, it would have two PIN numbers. That's all. So all you'd have to do is do a simple application to consolidate the PIN numbers, so the whole lot, both parts, would be on the same PIN number. It changes that legal description at the Land Registry Office just slightly to make sure that there's only one PIN. The lots would still be under one title. It's not once a consent, always a consent. The certificate allows a one-time transaction. That's all.
Okay, I think I understand. Mr. Hanna, you seem to have a little more experience in this regard. Does that satisfy your concerns, or how onerous would it be to the applicant to consolidate these PINs? Or maybe that's a question for staff.
Your question being, Mr. Chair?
How difficult it is for the applicant?
I think it's just a procedure at the Land Registry Office. I don't think it's very onerous at all. And the intent is not to create a new lot, to create a lot, to add a lot to an existing lot. So the intent is clear, and Diana has already indicated that the stamp used to create this transaction is a different stamp than were we stamping it to create a new lot. All right, it's a technical thing, but it's not addressed in the same manner as the creation of a new lot. And then at the registry office, if there are two PINs, if we were to consider a transaction later, they would also have to comply to zoning. So zoning may not even permit what it is that Mr. Hanna is suggesting could possibly happen.
Okay, I think I have it kind of figured out that if it was just a severance, we would have some concerns, but because it's a severance and a lot addition, that the two lots simply become one, and so it's just a secondary file number at the registry office?
Yeah, they have to merge.
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the Secretary Treasurer, I'm assuming there is a precedent on file for doing this. So, and you, I understand. I just want to make sure you have a condition that you can use to impose it. So then can we just amend the application to impose that second condition? Motion to amend the application to impose that additional condition.
So that's a motion to approve this with the extra condition?
Well, I wasn't going to approval, I was just going to amend the application, but I can as well.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the application, subject to the conditions set out in the staff report, in the addition of a third condition requiring that the pins merge.
Further question, Mr. Hanna?
Fully support that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor that has been seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Our secretary can maybe explain a little further, or maybe staff can explain a little bit further what is required for the merging of these pins at the registry office. I've never done it, but I don't think it's terribly onerous. It's just a minor procedural thing. So there you go. You have your that application has been approved.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just for the record, I'm bowing out. I don't have a conflict. I have a time constraint. Thank you.
Okay, next application, last application is application B2019-07 through to 019, 396 Vanier. Anyone in support or opposition, please come forward.
Hi, my name is Lee Quayle.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to point out, I don't know if it's necessary or not, but a member of the committee and the applicant do have a relationship, although non-fiduciary. That's all.
So in other words, you know the person, but you're not exchanging money. Something like that. Okay. Buy him a coffee. Okay. So this application is one severance, two variances. Variances for the severed lot and the retained lot. I think they're fairly straightforward from my viewpoint. You've obviously read the staff report. Any questions or comments you have on that?
My only question or comment would be under recommendations sort of 5A and 5B, just with the tree preservation enhancement plan. With the severed lot, there are no trees and there are no brush or any sort on what would be retained as the severed piece. So I'm not sure if that is necessarily applicable. I just thought I'd ask the question.
If there are no trees on the lot, then a tree preservation plan is pretty easy to agree with.
Right now, through you, Mr. Chair, there is only one lot, so we have to apply the condition. If through the process, the portion of the lands that doesn't have a tree, then that will be reflected in the tree preservation plan, obviously, and won't have any impact, and that would be an easy condition to clear. So we would prefer that it stay as it is, because we look at the lot as a whole, because the committee hasn't made a decision yet.
I'm inclined to agree with staff on this one. I think it's a fairly simple process to clear that. Any comments or questions from the committee? Mr. Hanna.
Just a quick question for staff. Will this application be subject to your infill process now, or the guidelines and whatnot?
Are you referring to the Rienz study?
Yes.
I believe it's still within the Rienz area. And yes, it would be subject to that. So when an application comes in, staff, or when a building permit comes in, the property that is created, the house that is proposed for that property, will have to be in line with that, with those regulations. And the regulations only speak to front yard setback. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, because I think this is a great application. The siting, the building looks great. I was just worried that if they went to the minimum setback, I believe on Siebert Ave, it might look a little out of place, but if it's subject to the guidelines, I think we're going to be fine.
I do have one further comment. There was some correspondence, emails and a letter from Bell Canada regarding a right-of-way. I've had some brief discussion with staff on this, and I think my opinion is that Bell Canada does not have the authority to require this. We have their concerns in the documents, but I think not that their concerns are irrelevant, they're immaterial for this application because they don't have the authority to demand that there be an easement for their telephone line. So other than that, any further questions from the committee? Comments from staff? Okay. A motion to approve this? Scott? Second, all in favor? That's carried. Motion, seeing that's the last of it, motion to adjourn. Thanks, folks.